This isn't just a story about getting fired. It's a story about what happens when the one person holding everything together is told to leave, and the entire system collapses behind him. The words hung in the sterile, air-conditioned conference room like a death sentence. Your position has been deemed non-essential. Mr. Sterling, the CEO, whose face was permanently locked in a state of mild disapproval, said it without a flicker of emotion. He adjusted his $1,000 tie, a silk noose Tom felt tightening around his own neck. Beside him, a woman from Human Resources, whose name Tom had already forgotten, slid a thick manila envelope across the polished mahogany table. It stopped inches from Tom's hands. For 8 years, Tom had been the ghost in the machine, the digital janitor, the system architect, the midnight firefighter. He was the one they called when a server cluster failed at 3 in the morning. He was the one who had personally coded the custom scripts that allowed their ancient, creaking payment processing system to communicate with modern banking APIs. He built the very infrastructure they were now using to fire him. And he was non-essential. Tom, we appreciate your 8 years of service, Sterling continued, his voice a low monotone. But as we move towards a more streamlined, cloud-based operational model, we are eliminating redundancies. The company is offering you a standard severance package. Tom didn't touch the envelope. He looked past Sterling, through the floor-to-ceiling glass, at the sprawling city below. He had spent more nights in the office staring at that view than he had in his own bed. He had missed birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays to patch a security vulnerability or to manually re-index a database that was on the verge of catastrophic failure. He had done it all for a salary that barely kept pace with inflation. The cloud-based model? Tom finally said, his voice surprisingly steady. You mean the one I wrote the migration proposal for? The one that requires a complete 6-month overhaul of our legacy code and a full-time dedicated team of at least 5 senior engineers to implement correctly? A flicker of annoyance crossed Sterling's face. Yes, that one. Your analysis was noted. We have consultants who will handle the transition. Consultants, of course. Overpaid suits who would spend the first 3 months just trying to understand the system Tom had built from scratch. They would produce a 100-page report that said exactly what Tom had been saying for the past 2 years, and they would be paid 10 times his salary for it. I see, Tom said. He finally picked up the envelope. It felt insultingly light. And the current system? The one processing several $1 million in transactions every hour? Who is managing that in the meantime? The HR woman spoke up, her voice bright and artificial. Our remaining IT team is more than capable of handling daily operations, Tom. We have full confidence in them. Tom almost laughed. The remaining IT team consisted of 2 junior technicians who thought rebooting a server was a high-level fix, and a manager who couldn't write a single line of code. They were good kids, but they were in an ocean of sharks armed with pool noodles. Tom had been the shark cage. He knew every undocumented vulnerability, every quirky workaround, every fragile dependency that kept the financial heart of the company beating. It wasn't written down in any manual. It was all in his head. All right, Tom said, standing up. He felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. The anger was there, simmering beneath the surface, but it was overshadowed by a profound, almost comical sense of irony. They had no idea what they had just done. I'll just go clear out my desk. Sterling nodded curtly. Security will escort you. It's company policy. As Tom walked back to his cubicle, with a burly security guard trailing him like a shadow, his colleagues avoided his gaze. They knew. They knew he was the one who held it all together. They knew this was a mistake. Tom packed his personal effects into a small cardboard box, a coffee mug, a picture of his dog, a few worn-out tech manuals. As he unplugged the small, unlabeled micro-server from under his desk, a personal project that quietly monitored the payment gateway for anomalies, he hesitated. Then, with a quiet smile, he placed it gently into his box. They had fired him. They didn't get to keep his personal watchdog. The walk out of the building was a blur. The security guard swiped him out one last time. The glass doors slid shut behind him, and Tom was standing on the pavement, holding a box of his life for the past 8 years. It was just after 10 a.m. The system, he estimated, had about 24 hours before it would eat itself alive. Tom didn't go home. Instead, he went to a small, independent coffee shop a few blocks away. He ordered the most expensive, most complicated latte on the menu, something he would never have done on his old budget, and sat by the window. He watched the relentless flow of people on the street, each one a tiny part of the city's massive, interconnected, unintended system, much like the code he used to manage. For the first hour, he did nothing. He just sipped his coffee and let the reality of the situation sink in. 8 years. Gone. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by a cold, sharp-edged anger, not just at Sterling, but at the entire corporate culture that viewed people as lines on a spreadsheet, redundancies to be eliminated, costs to be cut. He pulled out his laptop and updated his resume, the words flowing easily. Managed and maintained mission-critical payment processing infrastructure with 99.999% uptime. He paused. Solely responsible for legacy system stability and custom script development, ensuring uninterrupted multi-million-dollar daily revenue streams. It all sounded so impressive on paper. The irony was, it was all true. Meanwhile, back at the gleaming corporate headquarters of Sterling Commerce Solutions, the first tremor was felt. It was small, almost imperceptible. Kevin, one of the junior IT technicians, noticed a spike in API latency on his monitoring dashboard. Transactions were taking an extra 200 milliseconds to process. To the outside world, it was nothing. But to a system processing thousands of transactions a minute, it was the first snowflake in a coming avalanche. He flagged it to his manager, a man named Dave. "Hey Dave, the payment gateway is lagging a bit. Error logs are showing some weird authentication timeouts." Dave, already overwhelmed by the sudden increase in his responsibilities, barely looked up from his screen. "It's probably just network congestion. Tom used to say it does that sometimes. Just keep an eye on it." But Tom never said that. Tom would have seen that specific timeout error and known exactly what it meant. It meant the primary authentication token script, a delicate piece of code Tom had written 7 years ago to bridge a gap between two ancient systems, was failing to renew itself properly. It had a manual override that Tom ran every morning as part of his routine, a routine no one else knew existed. The system was now running on a 24-hour cached token. When that token expired, the entire gateway would stop authenticating. It wouldn't just slow down, it would die. An hour later, Kevin saw another alert. The database replication queue was backing up. Again, he went to Dave. "The backup server isn't syncing correctly. We're building up a pretty big queue of unprocessed transaction logs." Dave sighed, rubbing his temples. "Look, Kevin, just reboot the backup server. That usually clears the queue." It was the worst possible thing he could have suggested. Rebooting the backup server while the primary was struggling would cause a data integrity check failure upon restart. The system was designed to protect itself. If it detected a mismatch, it would halt all new write operations to prevent data corruption. In other words, it would freeze all incoming payments. Tom had built that failsafe himself. Tom finished his coffee and closed his laptop. He felt a strange sense of detachment. It wasn't his problem anymore. He had warned them for years. He had submitted proposals, held meetings, and written detailed reports about the system's fragility. He had practically begged for a budget to modernize it, and their answer was to show him the door. He decided to go for a walk. The sun was warm, and for the first time in 8 years, he didn't have to worry about a critical alert buzzing on his phone. He felt a pang of freedom. He wondered what time it was. He checked his watch. 11 a.m. The token would expire in less than 24 hours. The clock was ticking. For them, not for him. He thought about turning his phone off, but decided against it. This was going to be a call he didn't want to miss. The next morning, at precisely 10:05 a.m., 24 hours after Tom had been escorted from the building, the cached authentication token expired. The effect was not gradual. It was instantaneous and catastrophic. Across the globe, every single customer attempting to make a purchase through Sterling Commerce Solutions platform was met with a blunt, terrifying message. Payment gateway error. Transaction cannot be processed. The first calls hit the customer service department like a tidal wave. Within 5 minutes, every single phone line was jammed. The support email inbox began to fill at a rate of 1,000 messages per minute. The company's social media pages exploded with a firestorm of angry comments. Tired Sterling fail started trending. In the IT department, all hell had broken loose. Every screen on the monitoring wall had turned a screaming blood red. Alarms blared with a monotonous digital shriek. "What is going on?" Dave, the IT manager, yelled, sweat beading on his forehead. "Why can't we process anything?" Kevin, his face pale, frantically typed commands into his terminal. "I don't know. The gateway is refusing all connections. It's giving an invalid credentials error across the board. It's like we're locked out of our own system." They tried the most obvious fix, rebooting the main payment gateway server. The server went down, and it didn't come back up. Now, instead of an error message, customers saw a blank page. The system wasn't just broken. It was gone. The news traveled up the chain of command with the CPS with the speed of a bullet. In the boardroom on the top floor, Mr. Sterling was in a meeting with a group of potential investors, painting a rosy picture of the company's streamlined, efficient future. His phone buzzed, and he silenced it. It buzzed again and again. Annoyed, he finally glanced at the screen. A dozen missed calls from his chief financial officer. A text message in all caps. "Call me now. All payments are down. We are losing hundreds of thousands per minute." Sterling's blood ran cold. He excused himself from the meeting, his calm facade cracking. He stormed into his office, where the CFO was pacing like a caged animal. "What is happening?" Sterling demanded. "Exactly what the text says. Nothing is working. The entire payment system is offline. We've been dark for 15 minutes. That's over $3 million in lost transactions already, and it's climbing," the CFO yelled, his voice strained with panic. Sterling got Dave on the speakerphone. "Report," he barked. "Sir, we don't know," Dave stammered. "We've tried everything. The authentication servers are offline. The database is frozen because of a sync failure after a reboot, and we can't even get remote access to the core processors. It's a cascading failure. It's like the whole thing was built on a house of cards and someone just pulled one out." A heavy, suffocating silence filled the office. Sterling stared at the frantic CFO, then at the speakerphone, a dawning horror spreading across his face. He remembered Tom's words from the day before. He remembered the calm, knowing look in his eyes. "The house of cards," Sterling whispered. "And we just fired the man who built the house." The CFO stopped pacing. "What are you talking about?" "Tom," Sterling said, the name tasting like ash in his mouth. He managed all of this. He was the only one who knew how it all worked. Another agonizing 30 minutes passed. They brought in their on-call consultants, who, after logging in and looking at the system for 5 minutes, stated the obvious. This is a deeply complex, custom-built system with zero documentation. We can't even begin to diagnose this without the original architect. It would take us weeks, maybe months, to reverse engineer this. You need to find the guy who built it. The financial ticker on the CFO's desktop was a waterfall of red. They were now approaching $10 million in losses. The investors had left. The media was starting to pick up the story. The company was in a free fall. Sterling finally slumped into his leather chair, the fight draining out of him. He looked at his CFO. There was only one option left, one humiliating, desperate, and incredibly expensive option. "Get me his number," Sterling said, his voice a low growl. "Get me Tom's personal cell number. Now." Tom was at the dog park. He was throwing a well-worn tennis ball for his golden retriever, Buster, who was joyfully bounding through the grass. For the first time in years, Tom's phone was not buzzing with work alerts. It was silent. The sun was shining. Life was, for the moment, simple. Then, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen. It was an unknown number, but the area code was for the corporate headquarters. He smiled, a slow, knowing smile. He let the call go to voicemail. He threw the ball again for Buster. A few seconds later, his phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. He could wait. Let them marinate in their panic for a little while longer. The phone rang again. Same number. He ignored it. And a third time. On the fourth call, he finally decided to answer. He clicked the green button and held the phone to his ear, saying nothing. "Hello, Tom, is that you?" The voice on the other end was frantic, desperate. It was Dave, his former manager. "Hello, Dave," Tom said, his voice perfectly calm and even. He stooped down to scratch Buster behind the ears. "Tom, thank God, we have a major situation here. A complete outage. The entire payment system is down. We've been dark for over an hour. We can't figure it out, man. It's a nightmare." Tom listened patiently to Dave's panicked explanation. He let the silence stretch for a few seconds after Dave finished. "That does sound like a problem," Tom said simply. "A problem? Tom, it's a catastrophe. We're losing millions. Sterling is. He's losing his mind. We need your help. We need you to tell us what to do." "Dave," Tom said, his tone shifting from calm to clinical. "I'm sorry to hear that, but as of 10 a.m. yesterday, I am no longer an employee of Sterling Commerce Solutions. Your system's operational status is, respectfully, no longer my concern. I'm sure your highly capable team and your new consultants have it under control." He could hear Dave sputtering on the other end. "The consultants don't know anything. Tom, please, you're the only one who can fix this. What do you want? Just name it. Sterling will approve anything." "Put him on the phone," Tom said. There was a moment of muffled shuffling, and then a new voice came on the line. A voice Tom knew all too well, but it had lost its arrogant, commanding tone. It was a voice filled with pure, undiluted desperation. "Tom," said Mr. Sterling, "we need your help." "Mr. Sterling," Tom replied, his voice still infuriatingly calm. "I was under the impression my position was deemed non-essential." Sterling swallowed his pride. The sound was audible over the phone. "That was a miscalculation. A severe miscalculation. Tom, the entire company is on the line. Our reputation, our stock price, it's all collapsing as we speak. I am asking you, what will it take to get you to fix this?" This was the moment Tom had been waiting for, the moment the power dynamic had inverted completely. He was no longer the disposable employee. He was the man with the key to the entire kingdom, and the king was on his knees, begging him to open the door. "First," Tom said, standing up and starting the slow walk home, Buster trotting happily beside him. "We need to be very clear about the terms of our new relationship. I will not be returning as an employee. If I am to assist, it will be as an independent contractor." "Done," Sterling said immediately. "Whatever you want. What's your hourly rate?" Tom took a deep breath. He had thought about this number. It was audacious. It was borderline insane. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that they would pay it. "My emergency contractor rate," Tom said, savoring each word, "is $500 per hour." A choked gasp came from the other end of the line. $500? Sterling stammered. "Per hour," Tom confirmed. "With a 4-hour minimum for any engagement, billed portal to portal. But that's not all." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Tom could almost picture the scene in Sterling's opulent office. The CEO, pale and sweating, staring at his phone in disbelief. The CFO, frantically crunching numbers on a calculator, realizing that even at that astronomical rate, it was still cheaper than the money they were hemorrhaging every single minute. "What else?" Sterling finally asked, his voice a strained whisper. "This isn't a simple fix you can look over my shoulder and learn," Tom explained, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. "This system has years of my custom work baked into it. It requires ongoing, expert-level maintenance. Therefore, I will not be working on an hourly basis for this initial problem. That rate is for any future work. To fix this current catastrophic failure and to ensure it doesn't happen again tomorrow, I require a retainer." "A retainer?" Sterling asked, his voice wary. "A 6-month retainer," Tom clarified, "to guarantee my availability and to provide ongoing system stability consultation. You clearly need it." "How much?" It was the CFO's voice this time, sharp and anxious. Tom paused for dramatic effect. He stopped walking and looked up at the sky. It was a beautiful day to become a very wealthy man. "My 6-month retainer is to be paid in full, up front, before I type a single line of code. The amount is $240,000. He heard a sharp intake of breath, followed by a muffled, frantic discussion. He heard phrases like, "He's robbing us, and we have no choice, and just pay him." The company had lost over $15 million in the time it took them to call him. His price tag was a bargain. That's an incredible amount of money, Tom," Sterling said, his voice regaining a sliver of its usual negotiating bluster. "Can we agree to a monthly payment schedule?" "No," Tom said flatly. "The amount is non-negotiable, and it must be paid in full via wire transfer. You have my banking details from my direct deposit. As soon as I receive a confirmation of a successful wire transfer for the full $240,000, I will log in and begin work. Until then, your systems will remain offline. The clock, as you know, is ticking." He didn't need to say anything more. He had laid out his terms with the cold, hard logic of a machine. There was no emotion, no anger, just a simple statement of fact. This was the price. Take it or leave it. The next few minutes were the longest of Sterling's life. He looked at the live feed of their stock price, which had just been halted due to extreme volatility. He looked at the news alerts popping up on his screen, with headlines like, "Sterling Commerce Suffers Catastrophic Global Outage." He was in a prison of his own making, and Tom held the only key. "Fine," Sterling bit out, the word tasting like poison. "You'll have your money. Send him the wire transfer," he barked at the CFO. "Now." Tom smiled. "I'll be waiting for the confirmation. I would also like a contract emailed to me within the hour outlining these terms, stating my role as an independent contractor, not liable for any pre-existing system failures, but I'll get to work as a sign of good faith once the money is in my account. He hung up. He didn't wait for a reply. He walked home, gave Buster some water, and sat down at his personal computer, a powerful machine he'd built himself. He opened his online banking portal and waited. 15 minutes later, a new transaction appeared. Incoming wire transfer, plus $240,000. From Sterling Commerce Solutions. Tom leaned back in his chair and let out a long, slow breath. It was done. They had called him non-essential and thrown him away. Now, they had just paid him more than 3 years of his old salary in a single transaction, just to get him to answer his phone. The revenge was sweet, but the validation was even sweeter. He was essential, and he had the receipt to prove it. He cracked his knuckles, opened a secure terminal window, and prepared to log in. It was time to go to work. Tom's fingers flew across the keyboard. He didn't need to search for files or look up commands. The system's architecture was mapped out in his mind like his own neighborhood. He bypassed the standard login portals, which were all down, and used a secure back door he had built for emergency access years ago. He was in. The server logs were a bloodbath of red error messages, a digital scream of a system in its death throes. To an outsider, it was pure chaos. To Tom, it was a story he knew how to read. First, he addressed the authentication failure. He found the expired token, just as he had predicted. But he couldn't just issue a new one. The reboot Dave had ordered had locked the primary authentication server in a failed state. Tom wrote a quick 3-line script. It was an elegant piece of code that forced the server to bypass its corrupted startup check, manually load the security certificate from a backup location he had created, and then generate a new, valid 24-hour token. He executed the script. Within seconds, the authentication server blinked from red to green. Step 1 was complete. Next, the frozen database. The Junior Tech's reboot of the backup server had indeed caused a data integrity mismatch. The system, designed, had halted all new transactions to prevent corruption. The consultants would have recommended a full database restore from the previous night's backup. A process that would take hours and would lose an entire day's worth of transaction data. Tom knew a better way. He accessed the transaction log queue that Kevin had seen filling up. It was massive, but the data was all there, held in limbo. He ran another custom utility he had written for just such an occasion. It initiated a block-level comparison between the primary and backup servers, identified the exact point of the sync failure, and then force-replicated only the missing data blocks. It was a digital surgery, precise and clean. The process took 90 seconds. The database unlocked, the queue vanished, and the system began processing the backlog of transactions. Step 2. Complete. Finally, he brought the main payment gateway back online. From his remote terminal, he could see what the on-site team could not. The failed reboot had triggered a network switch to automatically blacklist the server's IP address as a security precaution. It was a simple fix. He whitelisted the IP address, and the server immediately reconnected to the network. He typed one last command. System restart, payment to gateway, service. He hit enter. Across town, in the silent, tense IT department at Sterling Commerce, the wall of red monitors flickered. One by one, they turned green. The blaring alarms fell silent. A phone on a desk rang. A customer service representative answered it, her voice trembling. Yes, it seems to be working now. Your order went through." A ragged cheer erupted in the room. In the CEO's office, the CFO refreshed his financial dashboard, the line graph showing their revenue, which had been flatlined at 0 for nearly 3 hours, suddenly spiked upwards. Money was flowing again. The entire fix had taken Tom less than 15 minutes. 15 minutes of work for $240,000. Mr. Sterling's phone buzzed. It was an email from Tom. Subject: System restored. Body: all systems are now operational. The root cause was a series of predictable failures resulting from a lack of routine maintenance, which I previously performed daily. I have stabilized the system for now. I will send a full report and a schedule of required preventative maintenance tasks by the end of the day. Independent contractor. Sterling read the email, his face a mask of cold fury and profound humiliation. Tom hadn't just fixed the system. He had sent a bill, an invoice, and an "I told you so," all in one. The company was saved, but the cost was immense. Not just the millions lost during the outage, and not just Tom's hefty retainer, but the complete and utter demolition of Sterling's own arrogance. Tom leaned back from his computer, closed the terminal, and went to the kitchen to make a fresh pot of coffee. His phone buzzed again. It was a calendar alert from the contract he had just signed. A weekly, 1-hour check-in with the IT department. Billed at his new rate, of course. A 4-hour minimum. $2,000 for a 1-hour phone call. He smiled. They had fired the non-essential man. But that man now owned them. He was no longer the ghost in the machine. He was as the machine. And they would pay, in every sense of the word, to keep it running. Tom taught Sterling Commerce a lesson that cost them millions. The people you think are disposable are often the ones holding everything together. Value your people, or be prepared to pay the price when they're gone. What do you think of Tom's revenge? Was it fair? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story of corporate drama, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. We want to know who is watching. Tell us what city you're watching from and your age in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.